right.
ducked out.
Jim ducked out. That's okay. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, after some technical difficulties.
We did it!
The last 24 hours or so. I want to point out that
I can't do this.
I want to point out that we could have done the show yesterday, but I was shamed out of my IT brilliance to try something. I was publicly shamed out of trying
all day, mind you.
That would fix
the shame. I carried this shame through all the meetings yesterday.
Just roasting me, and turns out that's what was needed to be done to do the show. So
it was the communication, though. It was
the delivery of the
message. If you had said, "Hey, I think if we just force it live, it'll work," I would have maybe been like, "Okay," but your message of we're gonna go live and shake the bugs out. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm imagining you hitting a car with a hammer, like trying to get it to work. Like, I just hit this engine a few more times. It's gonna turn over.
Shout out to Jim on our team. Yes. He was able to kind of, have the bravery to try things that we were not brave enough to try, and we got it fixed. So apologies for everyone. For not doing a show yesterday on Monday. Today's Tuesday, the 13th. 7 Figures or Bust podcast. Christian Brindle, Glen Shelton, the #1 podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. Episode 101. Do me a favor, good sir. I did not get my setup all the way done as we were trying to troubleshoot. Give me 20 seconds to get my setup complete, and I will be right back. Tell the people a little bit about the NBA games you've been watching, whatever tickles your fancy. Give me 20 seconds.
I wanted to have a moment of silence for the Celtics, so this is probably a good time for that. These Achilles heel injuries, guys, absolutely brutal to watch in the NBA. I feel old as it is. I can't imagine suffering a major injury like what appeared Jason Tatum suffered last night. Absolutely brutal. Guys, I am also very excited about today's episode for a number of reasons. One of the ones is this is officially the longest podcast I've ever been a part of. The last show that Christian and I did, Taco Tuesday, we only made it to 100 episodes, and that's where essentially the show ended. Still up, all those episodes. You can find them on YouTube, and you can find it on Spotify if you search Taco Tuesday or Let's Talk About Insurance. Fantastic show that we did together. It was a once-a-week show, but here we are, 7 Figures or Bust podcast. We do it 4 days a week, and we're officially at episode 101. We have crossed the 100 threshold. I was telling the audience this is the longest show I've ever done now officially.
So I want to very quickly kind of give a little background, right? So today's show, we might talk 1 or 2 more minutes of NBA playoffs. I'm sorry for those of you that can't stand it. But, I have interviewed Glen a couple of times, but there's one time in particular that came to mind to where I did a really deep dive interview with him. It was in the early days of us doing content together. I couldn't even tell you what year it was, at least 4 years ago. And I'll never forget, it was such a bad interview because I was so distracted. I had so many things like popping up on my computer, staff trying to get a hold of me, people calling. It's just like I wasn't present. And so I never felt like it was a very good interview. So I thought, what better way to right the wrongs of this than to run it back and do a really deep dive interview on Glen's story? Because for those of you that don't know it, Glen's got an amazing story, agent to marketer, to lead company owner. Then a co-owner of FMO, truly been everywhere, all over the map. And so we're going to kind of dive into that on today's episode. But yeah, I overheard you talking a little bit about Jason Tatum. Man, I mean, having the game of his life, carrying the team, must-win game. Looks like he might be out a long time. I mean, they don't know for sure, but sounds like
I think it was his Achilles. Yeah, I think it was his Achilles. Yeah, it was such a good game too. It was a bummer to see, as a competitor, even though I'm rooting for the Knicks in this series for sure, you never want to see the star player go down with an injury like that, you know?
It just goes to show too, like, you know, you can like have an idea of who the best team is, in a series going into the playoffs for a particular year, but injuries can change all of it, right? Now, I think they were going to lose this series to the Knicks anyway. I didn't think it was looking great, but I
Yeah.
think this Golden State series, I don't know if it'd be 3-1 if Steph was playing. Like not having Steph on the Warriors, that's a huge blow.
Does Steph play next game? Because they act like he might, but does it even matter at this point when it's 3-1?
It's
Like,
a 3-1 hole, very hard to climb out of, and you have a 37-year-old point guard. He's great, but 37 years
37.
old. He's old.
Oh, you say that like he's a Crip zombie, like just
In
absolutely ancient.
in NBA years, he's about 90.
NBA years. I was just telling Christian yesterday, I like tweaked my shoulder at the gym. I feel like I'm ancient. I can't imagine the sort of physical torment they put their bodies through. I mean, there's what we see on the court, and then there's everything that we don't see, right? Um, the only thing I can think is you have to be, and I was watching a little bit of Anthony Edwards kind of talking behind the scenes, and he was saying how much work he does in the gym to try to get ready to play basketball because it is so physical. But I know Jason Tatum works super hard too.
Yeah.
It doesn't it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you could do everything right. You could do everything right. You could be in the best shape, the best training, and that one step. I mean, it wasn't even a contact injury. He takes one step and just looks like a torn Achilles.
One wrong step, landing funny, whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many freak injuries like that. Like the first Derrick Rose injury was that way.
Yeah.
Like it's just kind of a freak injury. You step wrong. It's just it's a shame. It's a shame. It's too bad. Because he was having a hell of a game. He was really playing well and carrying them, and Jaylen Brown has not been good the whole series. I think he's banged up a little bit. Like they needed that game from him, and it looks like they're toast now. I never thought I'd see an Eastern Conference Finals of Indiana and New York. That's pretty wild.
Crazy. I feel like I would go out on a limb right now and say I think the Thunder would clean house against, if they make it to the finals. I think the Thunder would clean house on the Knicks or the Pacers if that's where this ends up going.
It'd be a sweep or a gentleman's sweep, something like it'd be.
Yeah.
It'd be I'd have a hard time seeing it being competitive. Okay, let's move into this episode's sponsor, so that way we can focus on this this deep dive.
I'm getting all of this attention. I feel so special.
This is the Glen episode, you guys.
It's like Friends. Did you see the Ross and Rachel episode?
I think I don't think it's too premature to have our sponsor this morning be Seven Figure University, is it?
No.
Guys, Seven Figure University is this episode's sponsor. So I don't know if it's available today, but it will be available for sure tomorrow. Seven Figure University is going on an over 85% discount, okay, for lifetime access. It's normally $5,000 one time for lifetime access. And what you get is a library of videos that's always changing, always being added to, and always being updated of A to Z how to grow your business. You need help with sales, there's in-depth sales training. You need help with scripting, all of that. Anything that goes into sales, there's in-depth training on all of it. You need help with marketing. There's Facebook ads training. We're building out an entire new section for that right now. You need help with go high level automations. There's whole sections for that. You need help with seminars. There's entire sections of that, including a video of a full seminar of me presenting to a room full of seniors. There is branding training. There's buying books of business training. There is so much that goes into that. Again, you can build a 7-figure agency with the information that's in this course for a limited time, basically from tomorrow, the 14th, until the 30th. So May 30th, it will be over 85% off from $5,000 down to $695.95. Okay. There's no yearly fees. There's no, annual subscriptions, nothing like that. Other people charge $10,000 for content that's equivalent to what we're offering, and I would put ours above any of theirs. So this is a steal of a deal. There has been thousands, probably up close to 1,000 people that have gone through it at this point. There's countless people that have kind of pointed to it, that it's really helped shape their career. So if you want to become a 7-figure agent or 7-figure agency owner, get 7-Figure University as soon as you can. Go to 7figureu.com or 7figure.com for more information.
Boom.
Okay, let's shift gears into all things Glen Shelton. All right, so I wanted to start off at the beginning, right? A lot of people know Glen as founder of Lead Heroes, founder of Hire Heroes, right? Telemarketing expert, lead generation expert, delegation expert, staffing expert, all of these things. But take us back to the beginning. What made you first get your license, and what were those early years like as an agent?
Yeah. So it started at the time. So I was in college. Well, we'll start there. I think that's probably the best starting point. So I have my associate's degree in general studies. I was looking at getting my bachelor's in most likely philosophy is what it was going to be, because I was wanting to go pre-law. So I didn't really care about my bachelor's degree. It was mostly just like get it done so I can go to law school. And then by the time I got to year 3 of college and I looked ahead at the road of this is going to be another 5 years of school before I am then in a position to start really making money. On top of the fact I'm not a great student. Like that's just not my, I love learning and I love studying things. Like that's not the, it's the structure of it, of, class,
classroom. Yeah.
tests. Yeah. Like I like reading, I like learning. That's never been the problem. It's the structure of the classroom, whether it's online or in class, that, and then being forced. And that's the other thing, is like, there's portions of it where it's like, maybe I'm not interested in this part of it, but then this other part I'm interested. So got to a point where, between looking ahead of where I was going and also the fact that I was married and I had a kid already at this point, I really felt the need to start making money right away.
Wait. So back up. So you're just graduating college at this point and you're moving into the workforce? I didn't realize you got married that early. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yeah. So got married very young. I was 20 years old when I got married. So I was married before this. I was talking about year 3 of college. So I have my associate's degree. So I have my associate's degree in general studies. So I have a 2-year degree. I was entering year 3. I had transferred to Oregon State. So go Beavers. And it was my first semester at Oregon State when I realized I wasn't going to be basically it seemed too far away. I really did want to become a lawyer. I thought it would be a great career choice. I thought I could make a lot of money. It was something that was really interesting to me, but it just seemed out of reach. It seemed too far away. I knew I needed to start making money essentially now. I was already in debt for my stupid 2-year degree. Now I'm looking at taking on 6 figures of debt or more, depending on what law school I would go to.
Right.
It just the math on it just didn't pencil. Like there was no way you could pencil it where how do I support my family, take on more debt, and then become a lawyer? And then on top of it, I'm having conversations too with people who had just graduated law school, and they were talking about how they couldn't find a job, or they're at some, entry level position where they're not even making six figures. And
Right.
I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, this is crazy. It doesn't make sense. I'm like, none of this makes any sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that my view of it, I guess, because I have a different view of it because I dropped out of college, right? I have a whole semester of community college under my belt. So
Hey,
there,
so much more educated than you.
you have much better education than I do.
I have a
Um,
degree from a community college.
yes,
I'm a genius.
yes. And then here's me, lost all my credits by now, everything like that. But like, I feel like a lot of people come out of school like that, thinking, almost like, in a sense, almost being like sold a dream of like, okay, you're going to go to school, you're going to get this degree, you're going to come out, you're going to be so qualified, and you're just going to walk into some position, some career path, right? And then they get
Yeah.
out and it's like, oh, it's a lot different than that.
Yeah, and again, like, I'm not against education or colleges, or like, if it makes sense for you and your path. I do think that there's a bit of a misleading, I don't know, especially our generation, the millennial generation. I feel like we were really sold this pipe dream of, as long as you get your 4-year degree, you're going to be set for life. Like, there was this, I don't, I feel like the new generation, that they're not really being sold that same dream. And maybe the previous generation, Gen X, maybe it was kind of true for them because that's how the workforce was really operating back then. So we were kind of this weird in between. That's kind of a story for another time. But
Yeah.
um, anyway, so I we moved to Oregon because I got into Oregon State and I really wanted to go there. I'm basically just getting started at Oregon State, and I realize I really need to make an income now. And I'm trying to figure out, is it possible that I can, make a significant income and stay in school? And then as I'm like looking around at some of these different job options, I realize it's really not going to fit. It's just not going to make sense. So, it was really sad to me at the time, but I drop out of school.
Mm.
I end up getting into Verizon after kind of looking around at a few different positions. The income potential working for Verizon, and this was like a retail sales position. I already had some sales experience already at this point. Um, I had sold ding and dent refrigerators for Sears at a Sears outlet store. I had done some door to door sales selling ADT alarm systems. Um, I had done a little bit of pest control. So I'd already done some sales. So, the Verizon position seemed like a good fit. It was technology, cell phones, the income potential was there. So I got into it, and it was a pretty good fit. And honestly, kudos to Verizon. They really invested in training and invested in their employees, which a lot of people don't. I remember being impressed with how extensive the training was before I even started selling. I probably trained for almost a full month and had a lot of success there. And now again, I get to this point after being there for a couple years. I'm making six figures. I have benefits. My family's provided for. We're happy, but it gets to this point where I'm again at this kind of crossroads of, well, what does the future look like from here? And the future was the corporate ladder, right? I'm
Mm.
already being I'm kind of being earmarked, or they're talking about me being the next assistant manager, and then it's like, and then you could be the manager, and then you could be the district manager, right? The classic, it was a classic corporate ladder, and you have all these people
Hmm.
who have already climbed it, who are talking to you about, you could do this, and then there's some like parallel moves you could make potentially inside the company. But um that this was the point in time where I really wanted to do something different. And this was like 2011, 2012. It was right around the time that Wolf of Wall Street came out.
Mm.
And it seems so silly to say this, but there was something watching that movie where it kind of clicked for me, like, you know, the financial space, there's so much money to be made in the financial space. And so I start looking around as I'm still working at Verizon full time. I'm looking around at some of these different opportunities, and one of the first ones I start looking at seriously is becoming a financial advisor for Waddell Reed.
Oh,
And
I never knew this.
so I was very close to becoming a financial advisor, and I interviewed with them. I kind of liked it. It wasn't too far from me where I was living at the time. But then, and they sold insurance, right? Do you know a lot about Waddell and Reed,
No,
or?
no, I don't know a lot about. So
Yeah.
their financial planning outfit, did they do like full on securities and all of those things? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I never took the job, so I can't speak specifics, but from what I remember during the interview, the focus was on really retirement and 401ks. I think there was some variable in there as well because it was all assets under management, right? AUM. So their whole pitch was, you know, Glenn, you're young, you become a financial advisor now. Over the next 20, 30 years, you get more and more money under management. You're going to get a percentage of all of that you accrue under assets under management. And that's kind of your ticket out. And they also sold insurance. And this is where insurance really came more into the field of play for me, because they're talking about how they're also selling insurance, and part of it would be I'd have to get my insurance license
Mm-hmm.
to do the job. And they're explaining how insurance can actually be a lucrative part of their business, because it's more, again, depending on the situation and what's applicable to the client. Sometimes insurance makes more sense than even the asset under management.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So at this point, are you still 20 or are you a little bit older at this point? So you got married at 20,
I'm 22
22.
at this point. I'm probably
Okay.
22. Yeah.
Okay. So 22, you're offered this job. Probably sounds pretty good at the time. What was
Yeah.
the ultimate decider that made you think this isn't it for me?
The the ultimate factor was I felt like I trusted my sales experience. I'm pretty seasoned at this point. I've got 3 or 4 years of solid sales history behind me. I felt like if I sit down with, and again, they were pretty upfront in this Waddell and Reed interview when I'm talking. I think I interviewed a couple times. So like they were basically explaining that, the typical sales cycle, it's like 5 to 10 meetings before you're getting that asset under management, right? I mean, if you have 2, 3, 4, $5 million that you're investing, you're probably not turning that over in 1 to 2 meetings, right?
Right.
So I didn't love the idea of that sales cycle. And I also felt like being a 22-year-old, I'm the trust factor of being that young, right? If I'm 22 years old and I'm sitting down with someone that's, 50, 60 years old and they have millions of dollars, and I'm thinking they might look at me and be like, kid, what do you know? Like, you don't know anything, right? So I felt like the commodity transaction of selling insurance, I felt like that was going to be so much easier for me. I felt like that fit into my paradigm so much better. And so that interview and ultimately I did get offered the job, but it kind of, that's what sent me spiraling towards insurance is, I'm looking around for some type of opportunity with unlimited commissions where I can essentially grow my own business inside the financial sector. I think it's financial advisor. I go to this interview and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you know what? I think insurance would be the best fit for me, actually, just based on, my history and my sales experience.
So And and all of this, it sounds like was first inspired in a way by the Wolf of Wall Street movie. What about that movie made you be like, I gotta have it. I want to be in this world in a sense. What was it about that movie? Very
So
polarizing, right? Very fun,
yeah,
very
it is.
entertaining.
It is. At Verizon. So again, I was being compensated very well at Verizon. I think Verizon's a great place to work. I would recommend to almost anybody, hey, talk to Verizon. I think it's a great company. The commission structure was capped. So I was very good at what I did. And my reward at the end of the month, if I hit my quota, is that additional sales essentially I wouldn't get paid on. So it's like you were getting paid a certain amount up until your quota. And then once you hit your sales quota, if you kept selling, you weren't being compensated essentially. So I get really good at my job at Verizon. I'm able to hit my quota almost every month, but then there's no benefit for exceeding it. So I watch Wolf of Wall Street and they're talking about on-cap commissions. And it's like a light bulb moment for me. He's talking about his $80,000 month, right? You know, and Jonah Hill's like, you show me an $80,000 check right now, I'll quit my job, I'll come work for you. You know, and he's sitting there and he pulls it out, right? Like,
hey, Donnie. Yeah, hey, so I quit.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I can't ever have an $80,000 month.
Right.
That's not possible for me because Verizon kneecaps me every time. I could sell 20,000 lines. I could sell 20,000 cell phones. I'll never get the compensation for it because that's how they structured their business. And that was the light bulb moment for me, is like, I could go somewhere else, like in the financial sector, and I could legitimately have on-cap commissions. I could have an $80,000 month. And that was what really moved me in that direction.
Got it. Okay. So, and how long were you working at Verizon? Two-part question. How long were you working at Verizon? And then you turn this job down. What is the next thing that jumps out at you? And I'm assuming this is when you started working at the insurance agency, the next thing.
Yeah, it is. So it was 2 going on 3 years at Verizon. So I'm 22, 23, and I turned the job down for becoming a financial advisor. Just didn't seem like a fit. And I'm doing all the homework I can on the insurance market at this point in time. It seems like PNC even my same thoughts today. I felt like I had that thought from day one. I was like, I don't want to I don't want to sell car insurance. You know, I'm like, that's not, I'm like, no, I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be a farmer's agent or a State Farm guy. Like, I'm like, that's not, I might as well be a financial advisor if I'm going that route. Right. But what ultimately I get kind of caught up in was I found a job listing for life. It was life insurance. Mortgage protection was really how they were framing it. But you know, I interview with them, and the company, it doesn't even exist anymore. It was Assura at the time. I think they've gotten bought or consolidated into another company. Brian Pope has spun up so many of these different kind of MLM style life insurance organizations. But I saw a job ad, I interviewed, you know, I love the idea of the commission structure. And what ultimately, like, the reason I signed up with this agency is I got promised a base. And so I was like, oh, this is perfect. There's a safety net here.
Security.
And then I after I accept the job offer and I go in the office to like sign my contract, they did a switcheroo on me. I sit down with the agency manager and he goes, I've got 2 contracts here for you, Glenn. This is the base pay. Your compensation is for sales is so much lower. If you're a good salesperson, you want to be 100% commission. And he basically sells me on getting rid of the base pay. while I'm sitting there. So, I leave this corporate sales job where I'm making, six figures. I've got full benefits. I didn't have a bunch of money saved up. I
Right.
probably had like $5,000 to $10,000 to my name. And ultimately I don't know if you could say it was a little bit of a hustle, right? I mean, the reason I signed up for this job initially to be this agent was because there was a base pay. And then, I end up being put on 100% commission, and it was to sell mortgage protection life insurance. There's a little bit of final expense. I get more into final expense later, but initially they had me focused on selling mortgage protection using mortgage protection direct mail leads.
Mm.
That is, and there was this kind of moment where, again, Wolf of Wall Street, right? That whole scene where he's sitting in that office calling on direct mail leads, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is it. I'm like, I found it, right? Like, I found this opportunity where there's uncapped commissions here. I'm going to have someone's name and information here on this mail, and I can call them up and, really start to make some real money. That was my thought.
Okay, so you do this meeting, this Godfather-like sit down is the way I picture it.
A little bit. The agency manager was not a godfather, but it was a bit of a switcheroo.
You come to me asking for a base salary. I'm gonna give you something better. I'm not gonna pay you shit. I'm gonna put you
imagine? Could you imagine at ESI if we pulled that? Okay, so I know we told you you're coming in, but trust me, not paying you a base pay is going to make you so much more money.
You're gonna make more money. I'm not gonna pay you anything, so I'll save money.
Yeah.
Well, plus the base pay, the lead cost would come out of your paycheck. But when you're 100% commission, you had to front your lead cost.
This episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by my mini course, How to Find and Buy Books of Businesses. Guys, in 2024, Glen and I, in our combined company, purchased and acquired through acquisition 900 clients. And over the years, we've purchased thousands of clients to grow our agency internally. And we've learned a thing or two over the years, right? There's certain things you need to look out for. You need to know how to value a book of business. You need to know how to transfer everything, what the expectations are in terms of the timeline. And you need to know how to put a deal together and structure it to protect yourself while still at the same time doing good business with people. Guys, this mini course is around 10 videos long. It's a quick and easy thing to get through. And it's a great way for you to grow your book of business in 2025. Whether you're finding an agent that is maybe been in the business for decades and they want to retire, and then maybe they don't have any kids to take over their business. Maybe you're looking at a situation with an agent that just hasn't been able to make it in the business and they're just looking to go off and try other things. Buying books of businesses can be a great way to quickly and rapidly grow your business fast. And we've unveiled all of the little tools and tricks that you need to know in this training. It's a one-time purchase for only $197. For that price, we're practically giving it away. Make sure to check it out now. Now back to the show.
So I actually had to start buying leads. So I mean, again, yeah.
So your first 90 days after accepting this, let's say hypothetical, I'm sure there was a time period where you had to get your license and everything like that. But
yeah.
Let's say your first 90 days in the role. What are your impressions on it? I'm sure you're, wet behind the ears, you're green, wide-eyed, everything like that. But what is your impression when you're coming in? You're like, okay, I got to buy leads. You're starting to figure out a little bit of kind of what this looks like. Did you have a moment at all of like, maybe I screwed up? Maybe I should have taken the behind door number one? Did you have that moment at all, or did that not come for a while?
Yeah, it did. So I actually, once I had committed, before I even signed up to work with this agency, once I knew I wanted to get into insurance, I buckled down and got my license in like 2 weeks before.
Okay.
So by the time I had interviewed, I'd already passed my test. I don't even know if I actually had my license yet, but I'd already passed my exam.
Okay.
So, I get in the door, and there's kind of this week period of training of, I'm getting contracted with a couple carriers, and I'm working with some of the agents who are more successful, who've been around the block before. I spend a couple days shadowing, right? I've got a day in the office where like the agency manager is trying to help me set appointments, and a couple of these agents do make it look easy too. Right. So there is that moment of like, oh, wow, like, I'm out on this appointment with this agent. I'm watching them do it. Surely it can't be that hard,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um, I think the initial struggle, I think what really fueled me more than anything, when I'm like really thinking back to like that first 30, 60, 90 days, the lack of savings that I had, like there was no option to fail on this.
Right. All
So
in.
yeah, there was no like, and I knew it worked because I saw these other agents in the office making money doing this. And so I'm just like, I just have to get in front of these people. It was a very shaky start. I remember my first sale sitting down and almost being shocked that the person was going to buy, like shocked that it was going to work, like I'll never forget. He was not a construct. He like did road work. Like he built roads essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell he wasn't really interested, but he felt like he needed it. So like the rapport really wasn't there because like he's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, oh yeah, let's do it. Okay. Like his wife, and like he had a couple kids, and his wife's like kind of sitting off to the side, and I just remember like I'm like almost like shaking, like going through the app, and I'm like asking him the questions, and I'm like, okay, I need a voided check now, sir.
You're trying to hold it together because you're like, is this actually happening? Is this really happening?
Yeah, I'm like duct taping this whole thing together, and I'm like, sign here.
Like losing your virginity.
That's literally.
So you're sure you want to do this? You sure you want to do this with me? With me?
Oh my gosh! Oh, of course we had to fix this freaking software today to do this interview. That's true though. That is, and I remember afterwards though, I honestly thought about it. Was late at night. It was like 7:00. But I remember being so confident walking out of that house. I was getting ready to knock the whole freaking street. I was gonna literally just be like, "Hey, he just signed up. Are you ready?" Like, but in the moment, I had like the least amount of confidence I've ever had. I think selling anything. I just remember being like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, you signed there. Okay, voided check. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna send this to the carrier now. Okay, they do the rest of it. Okay." I'm just like just stumbling through. Like I'm sure he thought I was just an idiot. Like.
I almost feel like, for me, I think about myself making my first sale, on my own, and I look back in it, and I almost feel like the person took pity on me in a sense. It's like something that they need. They know that they need. They're not buying it just to buy it. They need it, but it's almost like they can tell that you're relatively new, or you're younger, wet behind the ears, all of that, and they kind of take pity on you in a sense.
Yeah. I felt that, and maybe that was the kid. Maybe they, it was the writing was on the wall. You don't have to be a genius to see that I was very new. I got a ton of confidence after that first sale. The first sale came pretty quickly too. Like I would say within the first week, I made that sale after, so it's like I get hired, I have my license essentially going into the position. There's maybe a week of training and shadowing. And then I'm in the field, and that's probably like the second day I'm in the field. Like, I think I blanked my first day. I think I had like 3 appointments and, got no showed, and then just struck out with the other 2, and definitely got discouraged. I remember, but at the same time, I also remember thinking, like, it's my first time ever doing this. Like, I'm probably not even going to make a sale my first day, but I remember that second day being like, I've got to figure this out. And so I get that first sale that first week, and it was kind of downhill from there.
Yeah.
I got access to age direct mail leads, and I was just super aggressive on the phone, just super aggressive trying to set appointments, showing up at people's houses. Hey, we were trying to get a hold of you about this. Did you ever speak to anyone about this? Holding the direct mail lead in their face, like, hey, do you remember this? Like, I need to talk to you. And then just, repetition with that presentation over and over and over until eventually it did get to the point where I was super confident. I knew
Right.
that I could get in the house and talk to Mrs. Jones, and we could figure out a solution, and then, you start to learn, like, when there's not a deal, when you get in there and you're like, you know what, I shouldn't even be in this house right now. I'm like, there's not a solution, or then you're going up against the financial advisor, and I
Right.
need to call my financial advisor. He handles all my insurance and my life insurance and all my assets. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, screw you. I was like, all right, I'm out.
You start in kind of knowing what to look for, trends, buying signals, all of those different things.
Yeah.
So you start selling, right? You make that first sale, you start to get better and better and better at it as time goes on. How long are you selling insurance before you start working with callers and telemarketers? What does that trajectory look like, the next chapter?
So I start to figure out selling mortgage protection and final expense as well. So what kind of happens here, to give a quick overview. It's like I start to get burned out of the nights and weekends of mortgage protection life insurance. You're dealing with working class people. You can't meet with them in the middle of the day. So, I'm starting to work all sorts of hours, which part of getting into insurance and out of the retail side is I wanted to control my hours more.
Right.
So I start to mix in final expense so I can work more daytime hours. Then I start to figure final expense out. And with the direct mail leads, my agency's supplying all my marketing. I'm not doing any marketing besides the direct mail that my agency is doing. My agency that I'm working with, they would give me aged marketing. If I wanted some aged leads, they would dig up some aged leads. Who knows how old they were? They'd always act like they weren't that old, but who knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I could also pay for direct mail. And I was told that these direct mail leads I'm paying for were exclusive to me, that I would, pay I want to say they'd subsidize the cost a little bit, right? So, I'd pay $40, $45 for a mortgage protection lead, which I know costs more than that. I mean, nowadays for a direct mail lead mortgage protection piece, you're probably paying $70 or $80. So
Right. Yeah.
who knows what their actual cost was? Maybe they weren't subsidizing it that much. Maybe they were, but there was kind of this time of like utopia where everything was working, where the leads were good. I was getting plenty of leads. My contract levels, I was having enough success that they raised my contract levels, and I'm making more money than I'd ever made in my life. And it seemed like everything was working. And after a couple years of this, I'm getting around like year 2, all of a sudden, the direct mail isn't working like it was. And I'm starting to have some issues where I feel like other agents in the office are working the same leads that I'm working. I'm paying for fresh, exclusive direct mail leads. And all of a sudden, I'm being told that so-and-so in the office just called this lead last week. And that was the point in time. And now, and I'm super upset. I'm talking to my agency manager. He's telling me I'm wrong. I send it up the chain of command. I'm talking to the execs at the company, and I'm like, listen, I don't know if this was a mistake or if you guys are screwing me, but clearly I'm being sold leads that other agents are already working. And top to bottom, everybody's taking the company line. Glenn, you're wrong. Glenn, you're being silly. Glenn will get you some more leads. Don't worry about it. But not a single person took responsibility for what was going on. And it was a pattern. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was happening for weeks.
Yeah.
And
they're just sweeping it under the rug.
100%. Yeah. Nobody's taking responsibility. No one wants to admit it's happening. Ultimately, the agency manager, I think, was trying to maximize production. And so I think he was the one that's in charge of lead distribution for the agency. And so, the IMO was sending the leads to the agency manager. And I think the agency manager was just flushing the leads around as much as possible because he's thinking, if I'm sharing these leads with everybody, we'll get more sales. And that's what the agency manager wants. And nobody wanted to admit what was going on. So that was the point in time where I was so upset with the agency. I just exploded. I was like, I'm done. I'm never going to make another sale for you guys ever again. I was like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm like, you're literally taking food out of my kid's mouth. I remember saying that to the agency manager. I'm like, you are literally taking food out of my children's mouths right now. I'm like, I want you to know that, because I am trying to earn a living to provide for my family, and you are screwing me, and you won't admit it. And I tried to warn other agents who were part of the organization, and I literally walked out the door and said I was done.
Okay, so you walk out, have this moment where you figure out kind of what's going on. The jig is up, as they say, for the agency.
Yes.
What happens then? Do you I'm assuming you move your contracts to an independent FMO and IMO?
Yes.
Is that kind of what happens next?
So I realize that mortgage protection is as an independent agent now. So I get contracts and I can't use those same. Luckily, I wasn't using very many carriers because they just didn't have me contract with a bunch of carriers. So it was really easy for me to pick up several carriers that I'd never contracted with. So I pick up some independent contracts with different carriers. I realized mortgage protection is not cost effective for me. I had already figured out final expense. And that's when I'm like, okay, I'm going to go full time into final expense as an independent agent. And the only missing piece here, like I've already sold a lot of final expense. I've already sold, probably over $250,000 in premium of life. It's like, I understand all of this. The only missing piece here is my agency, my IMO had kept the marketing, like they had kept me addicted to their marketing. I just have to figure out the marketing. Once I figure out the marketing, I've got everything else. I know the game. And that's when I went down that rabbit hole of trying everything. At the time, avatar leads were really big. Anybody remembers those? It's the soundboard technology. So essentially overseas call centers where people are pressing buttons on soundboards to sound like they're Americans, but it's someone overseas pressing buttons. They're horrible leads.
I've never heard of this.
You've never heard of these?
No, I don't think so.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. They'd be like, hello? Like, hi. Dude, how have you never heard of these?
I don't know.
You're a spoiled Medicare agent. You're a spoiled Medicare.
So.
You don't know I'm just trudging through the mud on the live side. I am just trudging through the mud. And it's like Mrs. Jones is like, what is this about? I'd like to talk to you about burial benefits. And it's like just literally like people pushing buttons. It's horrible leads.
New idea for leaders.
Yeah, no, never. I would never. Never ever like.
Wow, I don't know how I've never heard of that, but I never have.
I'll find a recording at some point. I will send you a recording. It's insane.
We have to listen to one on the show, like live on the show. We need that. Okay, so you're starting to kind of experiment with different types of lead types. what is what are some things that, you start discovering work really well as an independent agent at that time?
So the hiring an appointment setter. So I actually found my first appointment setter was someone stateside.
Mm,
I had success with like three different appointment setters stateside. It's just they would all like there would always end up being some type of issue, some type of conflict where either they would be busy and they wouldn't be able to set for me for a week or two, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, I can't use you anymore because I need someone who can set with for me every week.
right.
Or they just whatever it was. Like I had success using an appointment setter. I'm able to spend more time in the field. More time in the field means more sales. So that was one of the early things that I did that I had a lot of success with. But then when it came to the actual lead generation itself, I'm realizing these avatar leads, which were huge at the time. I know you're like, you've never heard of these, but I'm telling you, they were huge at the time. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, surely I can find someone, even if they are overseas, and they don't have to use a soundboard. They can just
Right.
talk. And I can make it way better than this stupid soundboard technology. And that was the whole premise I wanted to really prove. And I'm thinking, I'm like, I can use an appointment setter. So I'm like, I'll generate the lead. I'll send a lead to the appointment setter. The appointment setter will set the appointment. And then I'm just spending Monday to Friday or Saturday, like whatever time allotment I'm have here, I'm purely in the field selling. And I
Mm,
got to the point where even though the quality of the appointments were definitely like when I was setting my own mortgage protection appointments, I would have weeks where I would close 70% of what I was setting for myself. It was a
right.
high intent lead. I'm setting the appointment. I would literally close like 70%. So yeah, when the system I created, the intent went way down. I'm not setting that appointment and the lead's not a direct mail lead. And so you have some different variables in the mix, but I'm able to run 50 to 60 appointments a week now. And I used to only run like 15 appointments a week, 20 appointments a week. So I tripled the number of appointments I could run.
Right.
And so that's when I really figured it out.
The
The
increased
system came together.
volume, the increased volume was basically overlapped the decrease in quality because no one's going to set an appointment as well as you can, but
Bingo.
you're saving all that time. You can run so many more appointments, and the volume of it all ends up being a net positive in sales.
12 to 14 appointments when I was in the field all day. Sometimes I do half days in the field, but if I'm spending all day in the field, I'm usually gone 9 to 7. And then I'm stacking appointments. If I already had an appointment scheduled at that hour, I didn't care. Stack it. I just wanted volume at this point. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about anything. I just wanted to go out in the field, and as I wanted to know that my time was invested with 10 to 14 appointments. And that was when I kind of cracked the independent side of it. Is and I knew this, and not to say that I didn't invent any of this. I stole a lot of this from other agents, right? Like I'm
Of course.
reading what other agents
Yeah.
are doing. I'm talking to other agents. I'm talking to other agencies. Like I'm not saying like I'm the one that invented doing 10 to 14 appointment or hiring an appointment setter or hiring someone. I didn't invent any of this, but I did create the system, and I figured out a solution where I could do it all myself. And so that was the key to success. Is I went from setting my own appointments and only running 15 to 20 appointments a week to outsourcing or delegating all of it. And now I have a lower intent lead, a lower intent appointment, but I'm double to triple the number of appointments. So I'm actually making way, plus being independent, my contract levels went up again too.
Right.
So I have better contracts. I figure out the marketing side, and as now here's my next step. My next step is I'm like, well, okay, I'm generating more leads than I need, and my appointment setter only needs to work 15 to 20 hours a week for me. I want to get my expenses down. If I can sell the extra leads or sell the extra appointments and offset my own marketing costs, now I'm making even more money.
Yeah.
And that was where I went from here. That was the next jump off point for me.
Yeah, it was having more leads than you could work and being like, I don't want these to go to waste. I'll just turn these into extra money, extra revenue.
Same with the appointment setting. Is I didn't need someone to set appointments for 40 hours a week. I only needed someone to set appointments 15, 20 hours a week. So, but I want them to work full time for me. I want to control their schedule. So what do I do with these extra 20 hours a week?
Right.
And my thought was, if I can sell that and sell it at maybe even a little bit of a profit, I'm offsetting my own cost. And now I'm able to zero out. That was literally the goal from the beginning. I had no intentions of starting a lead company. I had no intentions of starting a virtual call center. Zero. My only thought was, if I can zero out my expense, now everything I sell is profit. That was it. That was literally it. I had no intentions of doing anything else. That was literally it.
I have a couple burning questions I want to ask about the next parts here. I know we're getting close to the hour mark. Maybe we go a couple minutes over if we have the time. So you're at this point, right? You're starting to sell off the excess leads. At what point do you get to the point where you're like, I have something here. I have something that can be a machine here in terms of this lead generation monster that it's become today, which is Lead Heroes, right? And I feel like something that's very interesting that I noticed from your story is like, you were at the beginning of your career wronged in a sense in terms of the leads that you were being given, the leads you were paying for out of your own pocket. We're working with this agency, right? Like they're telling you they're exclusive. They're sharing them all around the office with all the agents kind of thing. They're just doing a lot of old dirty tricks that we both know, lead companies and agencies have been doing since the beginning of time, How much did that have to do with going through that experience? How much did that have to do with the principles that became Lead Heroes? Because one thing I've always loved about the way you built Lead Heroes and what made me comfortable partnering was like, you've always been like, we're exclusive leads. They go directly to you. Everything that we've ever communicated to people about the leads is 100% true. Being behind the scenes now, not as a customer, but as a co-owner now, like, if there's a mistake that gets happened with the leads, we make it right for somebody, right? Like we do everything a lead company should be doing, but there's so many lead companies that would pull shenanigans like that, that the agency was pulling. How much did that have to do with the principles of what ended up being Lead Heroes?
Keep going. No, keep going. I know it's a two-parter here. Keep going.
Yeah. And sorry, the other part of the question is like, at what point does it become kind of on the train tracks of the trajectory of what it becomes today?
I'm still visibly angry about what happened. I'm still upset. I'm still very upset about how I wish I didn't, like, there was a part of me that wanted to just stay inside that agency and keep selling. I was happy. I felt like I had figured it out. I'm still bothered. I mentioned Brian Pope on the stream already, and I said his name again right now because he was ultimately the one in charge. I don't feel like I ever got a chance to really communicate with him directly. It was kind of his underlings, but I don't think he gave a damn. I don't think he cared at all what was really going on. He was very removed from what was going on inside the company. So it was a very big part of why Lead Heroes became what it was. If I hadn't been wronged, I don't know if Lead Heroes ever even really gets started or off the ground, but there was part of me that was like, I want to do this right. I kept seeing, and my story is not unique. Someone in the comments already mentioned that they kind of had a similar situation. They got hustled with leads, and the whole industry is full of those types of stories. So
totally,
there was a big part of me that was like, I want to do this right. And I want to not just do this right for me, but because the bullshit that's going on in the industry needs to stop.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why you can't produce an exclusive lead for an agent, and it actually is exclusive. And you generate it for the agent, and it goes to the agent, and then it's a true opportunity for them to make a sale. So that was a really big part of it. What was the second part? What was the second part of your question?
Okay, so second part of the question is how. So it starts off with selling off the additional volume that you don't have time to work.
Yes.
How? What is the trend? What is the point where it starts to transition into
that's right.
becoming this monster,
Yeah.
this animal of a company that it is today?
Yeah. So this is the fire call, and shout out to the insurance forums. And if some of you are out there listening or watching this and you're on the forums now, or you were on the forums, it's different today, I think, than it was back in the day. It was before Facebook groups were really a thing. So the forums was really like one of the few spots on the internet where like insurance, especially on the life side, like you guys congregated, and I was a part of this. I was on the forums, and I wasn't trying to sell. I was just, all I did is I created one post on there, and I said, hey, I've got an appointment setter I'm having success with. I just need someone to pick up the extra 20 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
Send me a DM. And I got a couple people interested, and then they shared, and then what happened was they shared success using my appointment setter. And then all of a sudden, I've got 5 people reaching out to me saying, hey, so-and-so used your appointment setter. I need an appointment setter. Or, hey, I need leads. I heard from so-and-so that they got leads from you and they worked. And then I was like, well, shit, I only have one appointment setter. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here?
Right.
And so, and then that's when I was like, well, maybe I hire another appointment setter. It can't hurt to have 2 or 3 appointment setters. And so then I go up to like 3 appointment setters. And a lot of it was word of mouth. I wasn't doing any marketing. I wasn't doing any advertising. The start of Lead Heroes was really word of mouth between agents who were having success working with me, working with my appointment setters. And then once it continued to grow and I hit about 10 and I had a small team, that's when I had this moment of, it's really hard to try to manage this team of appointment setters and manage the agents who are working with these. And I'm like, I kind of have to choose my battle here. Like, I can't sell full time and manage this team full time and manage these relationships with these agents. And so there was so much success without trying too hard at this point.
Like fire.
I was like, I'm gonna chase this. Like, this seems like the best hand I have right now. Like, I want to play this hand and see where this goes,
Yeah. It's almost like, helping the masses be successful at that point in time outweighed the individual success you could accomplish with the appointment setting, because it was working for you. You're selling insurance, all that stuff. But yeah, that's pretty wild, So it kind of started in the forums.
In the forums. I was in a ghost Mutual of Omaha office.
Yes, I remember
sending DMs. I'm a brand new independent agent. I just had my second kid. I still don't have really a ton of savings because I made another transition out of, the job I had at this agency as essentially an LOA agent. I was like an independent LOA agent, 100% commission, and now I'm trying to figure out how to become an independent agent. I just had my second kid. I'm secretly working out of this abandoned Mutual of Omaha office, which is, that's a story in and of itself. The career agent side of Mutual of Omaha, they essentially didn't want to keep it going, but they didn't want to fire their agents. And so it was like this gigantic office, and there's only like 2 agents in it. And then I had a family member working for them. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, he's like, nobody's in the office. He's like, you can come with me. I was like, okay. So I'd be in the very back of this Mutual of Omaha office, slinging appointment setters. And, that's really where Lead Heroes was born.
On the Mutual of Omaha office, how long were you in that office? Like, how long did that go? I've always wanted to ask you that.
Solid, probably 3 or 4 months of almost daily. I'd say almost daily. I was in this abandoned Mutual of Omaha office in
That
the
is so
very
funny
back
to
of the
me.
just hiding. I'd always be I kept waiting for someone to walk in and be like, "What are you doing here?" But never happened. That never happened.
Man, it's like the SBA today. You're hiding in the
Mm.
SBA offices.
Yes,
There's
yes,
tumbleweeds
exactly,
flowing across
exactly.
the office. And
Yes, exactly.
okay, so I know we're past the time. One last question, and then we can kind
Yeah,
of move into kind of closing this out a little bit. But um, great conversation, great story.
yeah.
I
I
think
appreciate your questions.
yeah, I put a lot of thought into them. I did. Um, so lead heroes starts to grow. I think this is kind of more of like a lesson the audience can take, because like what you did with lead heroes was you truly scaled it. You built layers of teams. You put team leaders in positions of authority to manage teams, and there became this like layered approach to the company, right? um how did that kind of mentality start? Did it get to did it just start getting to the point where there were just too many people for you to manage and you're like, okay, I need managers? Was it just as simple as that?
Yeah, I wish I could say it was like I took a smart approach to it, but it really wasn't like that at all. I would say the way Lead Heroes scaled, it would basically be like grow till it breaks and then figure out a solution, and then grow
Mm,
till it breaks and then figure out a solution. So, it gets to the point where I'm trying to manage by myself 20 people. It's like there's no way, I can't do it. So now I've got to bring in a manager, or I'm promoting someone from within to be a manager. Now I'm realizing the manager needs help, right? The manager can't even manage all this. So now someone's kind of an assistant manager to the team. And then I'm completely playing with the team model. What does a team look like? What should a team size look like? How many managers to a team? How many teams to an executive management team? Today Lead Heroes has 3 different layers. There's, I'm at the top, and then I've got my executive management team, and then I've got my team leaders, and then the assistant team leaders, and I've got the army of callers. But it took so much failure, so many times of just like a lot of times trying to do everything myself and getting to the point where I was just losing my mind. I'm like, there's no way I can do this. Like, there's got to be a better solution here, and kind of continuously breaking. The one of the neat parts is, and I think some of the reason why I've had as much success as I have had is early on I chose to go to the Philippines.
mm-hmm.
And I think going over there and meeting some of the early team members and understanding the culture and what's going on over there and how this all works, I always felt like that gave me kind of a connection to the team in the Philippines that a lot of people who hire over there don't have. There's so many people who work with Filipinos who've never been over there. And so I felt like going over there was super important, which, hindsight being 2020, it's almost weird to think why that was so important to me. But like, as soon as I wanted to go all in on Lead Heroes and really grow the company, grow the team, I was like, I got to go. I was like, I got to go over there. I jumped a plane and went over there in 2016. And that was awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah, that scaling was very difficult. Now I feel like, especially when we're working together, I feel like we try to take a much more structured approach to scaling something where we're anticipating the breaking points, right? Like,
Right.
that's smart scaling. Smart scaling is like, I don't think it'll work past here, or I don't think this person can do all of this. you
Right.
know at the time, I'm just like a bull in a china shop. I'm just like, this is breaking. I'm like, like a bumper car, just bouncing off of the walls, like breaking everything.
Yeah, and I can totally relate to that, because I went through that myself, trying to be, an agent that was producing, trying to be an upline, trying to, do all the billion things that I was doing at one
Yeah,
point in time. So I totally understand. And yeah, I think both of us kind of, when we came into our partnership, we kind of came into it as maybe a little bit more seasoned versions of ourselves,
Oh,
which
for
was
sure.
probably good.
Yeah, for sure.
But okay, so last question, and then we'll close this out.
Okay.
This has been a great interview.
Yeah.
If you are just tuning in now, highly recommend you go back and watch this from the beginning. Glen's got a really unique story, and I don't think we talk about it enough. So I'm glad we got a chance to do this. So leading up to, I think it's AEP 2023, we start talking about the merger. What was the, because at the beginning you approached me about it and wanted to have a conversation probably about a year earlier than we actually did it. It was probably like we first started having conversations about it, like I want to say in 2022 or the beginning of 2023 or something like that. And then we started talking about it very seriously at the beginning of AEP 2023. What did you see in terms of that move to kind of help Lead Heroes, but also help the overall company? Like, because I think you saw something that I didn't at first. What made you want to make that move?
The evolution of I mean, again, I think the point I was really fixated on is longevity. How can Lead Heroes continue to grow and continue to be a focal point in the agent community? And part of the concern I had was the growing rules and regulations. So by integrating with ESI, with you, at the time, Christian Brindle Insurance Services, my thought is this is a mechanism, this is an integration that can keep Lead Heroes, on top of all of these things, on top of the compliance, on top of, what the trends are in the industry, on top of the latest marketing trends and what needs to happen and what should happen. The community here in Seven Figure Agent too is bar none one of the best communities I've ever been a part of. I wanted to give a shout out to you guys too, because I've been a part of a lot of different communities, especially in the agent side of things, the insurance communities, and some of them are not very nice. Some of them are not very helpful. And the community here that you helped create has been tremendous, both personally and professionally and all of the above. So I really felt like there's an X factor of that integration happening where, I saw growth and I also saw the longevity piece of it. I think part of being a good business owner is understanding what the next evolution looks like, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So that's my final thoughts though on today's episode. And I do appreciate your time and the questions as well. Yeah.
Of course. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, let us know about it. Comment on the live stream and Seven Figure Medicare Agent Facebook group for a chance to be entered into Freebie Friday. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube to make sure that you don't miss any full-length video recordings. Make sure to subscribe on audio-only platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Make sure to give us a 5-star review on Apple. We'd appreciate it. It helps us a lot. And yeah, that closes out episode 101, the Glen episode, as it will be called.
Boom.
And we'll see you guys on the next one. Appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end. And here's to your success and abundance. Thanks, everybody.
Happy selling.